The Art and Industry of Business and Living podcast, discussing conscious choices around business, money, life and living, and creating a greater future for you and the planet.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Art and Industry of Business and Living. You're with Simone Millis as your host, and I'm at home. I'm in Phrygian Beach, absolutely loving it. It's heading into winter, so it's got this crisp, beautiful mornings and beautiful sunny days. It's awesome. I love it. It's so great being home. And I like the small things, you know, being able to make a smoothie, being able to juice, making your own coffee. These are the things that you may take for granted. But when you travel as much as I do, they become the wonderful things in life. Patting my dog, you know. So anyway, I am here joined today with my awesome, beautiful friend, Emily Russell.
Hi, Simone. Thanks for having me.
She's in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which, you know, I have been known to say, I'm not sure Chattanooga's a real place. I never heard of it until Emily moved there. I love the name, Chattanooga. It's like, I see you in Chattanooga.
It's real and it's beautiful. It's like heading into summer right now, and most people think that it's a little too hot in the South, and I love it. Same thing, like sunny days, and it's humid, and I love being at home too, since I've also been traveling so much. So you do appreciate when you're home, the little things.
Absolutely. So we're going to do something a little bit different today. I mean, usually I'm talking to different people and, you know, interviewing them, or we're talking about different tools of access consciousness and how to create, change your life, your business, etc. But today we wanted to talk about Joy of Business, which I wrote a book called Joy of Business many years ago. It's translated into 11 languages, almost 13 languages. And Emily was going to interview me. She had a bunch of questions and we were going to talk about Joy of Business. So here you go, Emily. Over to you.
So one of the things I would really love you to talk about is when you grew up, like with your family, how did you talk about business and money with your family? And was that different, or is that something that you have over time realized how different you are with?
I've got to say, I'm not quite sure when I started to have this joy of business or, you know, had this love of it. I will say growing up, we were not allowed to talk about business and money at the dinner table. We were, you know, meat and 3 veg, get your glass of milk, you know, and you're not supposed to talk about it, which I always found interesting because I loved talking about business and I loved listening to my father, he was an accountant. But he also brought all these other businesses. I mean, at one stage we had a butcher shop. At one stage we had a picnic table shop. I think that may have been in the early 80s, you know, when the picnic tables came out. And he did many different things. He dealt with artists. You know, many different businesses. And I always enjoyed hearing him talk about it. And I think at an early age, I liked the energy of it, is what I'm going to say now. Now, at the dinner, although we were told don't talk about business and money, which I was like, really? What do we talk about? And then my mother would start talking about, you know, the kid up the road just won a swimming carnival, or his cousin's mother's father's son, you know, long distance relative. And I was like, why are we talking about this? Why is this more important than what we could, you know, be talking about? So I wasn't allowed to talk. And I watched my dad, and I absolutely adored my dad. He's a brilliant man. He has passed away now for a few years, but he was so awesome and so kind and so caring. And now I get how creative he was. Even though he was an accountant, which is such a service industry, he was so creative in the sense when he first started his accountancy business, he literally went door knocking to find clients. And the first couple of his clients were, and they didn't have the money to pay him. So we got paid in paintings. And I now have some of those paintings in my house, and they're absolutely stunning and beautiful and worth more than what they were worth at the time. So I loved his creative capacity. So I did watch that. And then at high school, I'm going to say a lot of people were talking about, you know, getting married and having kids, etc. And I never desired to get married and have kids. It was just not on my agenda. I looked at what I could create. And I think the creative aspect was what I really enjoyed, and having an idea and being able to actualize it into this world. So around the age of like 16, 17, I knew that I wanted to own my own business. And people used to say, what do you want it to be? And I was like, I have no idea what I want it to be. I just know that I want to own my own business. So, because to me it was something that was so creative and malleable, something you could change all the time, something that didn't have this solidity to it, which is funny because so many people think business does have a solidity. And if they do, it usually ends up destroying it. So, you know, I think it was more of an organic process of how this all came about. And I've got to say, being surrounded by my father and his level of creativity and his capacity to keep choosing and changing was sort of like detriment in the choices that I did.
Well, because I will say that is so similar to you. There is not a lunch or a time spent with you when you are not talking about creating and what else could be possible. And one of the things you just said about business is you really see business as an outlet for creation. And it seems like in this reality, business is not that. It's, you know, a drudgery or a way to make the money that you need or to make ends meet. Can you talk about that, how you see business as a source of creation, and that your life, you often say your life is your business is your life, which is such a huge part of Joy of Business. Do you want to talk more about that?
Sure. Well, yeah, I do see a lot of people see business as, you know, what's the bottom line? You know, they're looking at the money, they're looking at the quarterly statements. It's like, what's the bottom line? How much money are we making? What I found over the years is that when you start doing what brings you joy, hence Joy of Business, the money shows. So if you're not making it about money and yet willing to receive money, and there's a whole lot of tools that, you know, we can talk about with that, willing to receive the money with the tools you use in doing what you love, it's a totally different reality, absolutely totally different reality. I mean, gosh, I have a story years ago when I grew up in Sydney, Australia, and they have Mardi Gras which is massive. It's like, you know, the second biggest, gay capital in the world is Sydney, and massive, massive parties. And I didn't have any money. And I was like, well, I would like to, you know, be able to go to these parties. I'd like to be involved. I'd like to have fun. So I looked at what I could create. And I looked at what people were into at that time, and everyone was wearing glitter, you know, glittering their bodies, glittering their faces, etc. So a friend of mine and myself went and got glitter wholesale. We went and found where we could buy it wholesale in big, big tubs, and we bought this gel and bought these little, you know, plastic tubs, and we mixed up all this glitter gel and put it into little tubs, and we walked around Oxford Street in Sydney with these big baskets going, you know, glitter for $5, hugs for free, glitter for $5, hugs for free. And we sold so much glitter that we had more than enough money. We got a lot of hugs too, more than enough money to, you know, be able to go out and party and have a good time. But to me, you can always create something to create revenue, always. And what I would like people to start looking at though too is, what are you creating and what can you create that can make a change and a difference in the world? So for me, I went backpacking overseas for 3 years, you know, very typical Australian. I'd say I'm going for 6 months and I ended up going for 3 years, and, you know, whole lot of other stories in that, living in a house in London with 21 people and 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. I do not know how I did it now. I honestly don't ever remember having to wait for the bathroom, but I don't know. You just did it. And it was so gross, like that when you went into the kitchen, you put shoes on. There's 21 people cooking in that kitchen and doing different things. It was like, I would not wish that upon myself now for anything. But at the time, I was young. It was awesome. I had a great time. But what I did do was I used to travel around on one of those big red buses. I'd buy a bus ticket because I had hardly any money. And I'd go from one end of London to the other and would write things down of what I wanted to create in my life. And I'd write poetry and I'd write stories. It was just to get out of the house, like, and not be surrounded by so many people. One of the things that I did start writing down, and I created the whole Good Vibes for You business, which was a business I had before Access Consciousness. What did I want to create in the world? And I think that's what you need to start looking at with business, is what would you like to create in the world? And what would you like to create as your life? And that's where the life comes into it. Because if you start to look at what you want to create as your life, I looked at it, and one of the things I went, I love traveling. I don't want to stop traveling, but I actually don't like traveling with no money. So how could I create traveling and earn money? So that was the basis of a lot of things that I came from. I don't want to go home and have everyone say, well, you know what, now, you know, you've got all that trivia system, you should settle down and get a job. That was like, no, that's not what life I want to lead. Then I looked at, what do I want to do? And for me, it was, I designed to be able to create a place where people were more vulnerable to each other, where they actually saw the planet. And I mean, like, you know, walking into a park, walking down the street, seeing a tree or noticing it. And you don't have to go hug a tree. You can hug a tree if you desire. It's your choice. But just being really grateful for, you know, the ocean, the mountains. I mean, I grew up in the ocean, and I also love the mountains. And people, you know, they don't appreciate it to what the extent that I think that they could. And then, so I looked at that and went, okay, I'd like to create a change on the planet. Not for the planet to change, because the planet's fine. It's we're the ones who need to create the change on the planet. We're the ones that need to create the change with each other and the way we use the planet, or the way that we could contribute to the planet. So I started looking at that and writing some things down. And then I actually saw a really famous musician, and she had a T-shirt on that was just really derogatory. And I thought, God, you have the potency to wear something that can change the way people look at themselves in the world, and you chose that. So that's when I actually started my T-shirt designs. I started, you know, designs of T-shirts with things written on them like, you know, the Gandhi quote, be the change you want to see in the world. Or, you know, I had so many. It was like, and what I did was I got these quotes and these sayings from my travels, from things I heard in the world that I thought, that's great. So that's how I see that you can be that energy of creation of what would you like your life to look like, and what would you like the world to be. So, of course, by the time I met Gary Douglas, the founder of Access Consciousness, I was like, oh my God, you're exactly what I've been asking for, and exactly what I've been looking for, and exactly the change that I would like to see on the planet. You know, I had merchandise that he had tools and processes that were changing the world. So,
can you talk about one of the conversations you had with Gary Douglas? Because you talk about, you know, all the stories you just told are such an example of just following what you love to do and what makes you happy, and the business and the joy and the money coming from that. And I know you had a conversation with Gary about how differently your perspective was on business. Do you want to talk about that conversation?
Yeah, it was actually in Perth, Australia, and I was working with Access by that stage. There was something that somebody was choosing. It was a woman from America, actually, and she was choosing something, and I looked at Gary and I went, why is she choosing that? And he said, what do you mean, why is she choosing it? Well, there's no joy in that. And he looked at me like, you know, with someone who cocks their head, like with total confusion. What do you mean? And I went, well, there's no joy in that. That's not a joy business. That's not joyful. And he went, people don't do business for. And I went, yes, they do. And he went, no, they don't. And I went, yeah, they do. And he went, no, they don't. And then I looked at him like cocking my head, going, what are you talking about? Like, no, people do not do business for the joy of it. You do business. I was gobsmacked. I was like, seriously? And he was like, yeah, they don't do it. They do it for all of these other reasons and justifications. Most people talk themselves into disliking it and hating it and having it be something that they avoid, rather than looking at it that increases their life. And like I've just been talking about, you can change the planet, you can change people's points of view, you can put something fabulous and beautiful to the world. So that's when he said to me, you need to do this. And my point of view was, I don't want to do classes on this. That's boring. I don't want to sit on stage and talk about this. I'd rather actually be creating. I'd rather actually be in business. And he said, you need to start doing this. And I'm going to say about the first 5 classes, maybe 10 classes that I did, I really didn't like it that much. I was like, God, I could be doing so, you know, when you watch a bad movie and you think, that's 2 hours I'm never going to get back of my life. I sort of had that point of view. I was like, this is boring. I could be creating much until I noticed that people came up afterwards and the glow in their eyes and the pure joy that they had and the gratitude for the tools that I was using and gifting them in the class. And I had become so complacent about it in the sense of that's how I live. That's how I chose to live. That's how I choose to be. And seeing them get some of these tools and go, oh, that's what I can be in business. That's what I can do. Like, this is a totally different way to do business and be in business. And when I noticed those changes, that totally matched the energy of what I wanted to create in the world. So then I was like, okay, I get it. This is creating. This is being business. I will do more of these classes. And then eventually, of course, you know, I put a lot of the tools into the book, and we have the Joy of Business book.
And then the classes that you've done have changed over time. They've had, you know, different formats and names, but the one of the master class you are doing now, it's a 3-day Joy of Business class called Business Done Different. And as we've been talking, you've been talking about these tools that you use. And one of the things that I think is so different about Joy of Business classes in the book is that it's not a recipe of here's how you should do business, like so many business trainings are, but there are all these tools to empower people. So do you want to give a few of your favorite tools that really kind of embody the energy of Business Done Different and like help people find a way to create business that works for them?
No, I'm not giving away any tools. No, I'm kidding. No. Yeah, and I guess, you know, number is be willing to change your point. Like if you woke up each morning and, you know, one of the clearing statement that we have with Access Consciousness and went, okay, what would it take to destroy and uncreate my relationship with my business and everyone I work with, times a godzillion, right and wrong, good and bad, POC and POD, all names, shorts, boys and beyond. And the clearing statement, you can find out more on theclearingstatement.com with the wonderful Dr. Dane talking about it. But the thing is, what it does is it changes the energy, it changes the limitations, the conclusions, the decisions, all of that you've come to, the stuck points of view on a certain topic. And so many people, when they start a business, they start to slowly create it to be solid. And that's where you create the limitations and the solidity. So be willing to change your point of view every day. Just say, hey, I destroy and uncreate my relationship with the business. You know, if I was going to change everything, if I destroyed and uncreated the entire business, it's like, what would I change? What would I create? What would I choose? Create, change, and choose. And have a look at that, because you can change anything. If it's not working, change it. So be willing to change your point of view. And the other thing is, too, have a look at how you're creating your business in the sense of, are you doing it based on industry standards? Are you doing it based on somebody else's point of view? Like, was this something that you learnt from your parents or learnt from, you know, university, or somebody that you perceived, you know, had more information or was more intelligent than you? What I would like you to start doing is ask the question, what do I know about business? And what do I know about this business? Because the thing is, you know far more than what you've been willing to acknowledge. And what I'd like you to do is just take a topic, any topic, right? And then even if it's one that you have never worked in before in your life, you haven't studied it, you haven't worked in it, and pick a topic. And I mean, even look at, say, event management or hairdressing or restaurant or real estate, and ask the question, what do I know about that business? Because there's things that you tap into energetically that you are aware of, that you know. I mean, okay, so say for hairdressing, you know, be a good hairdresser, yes. And do you have to have an element of being able to connect with people? It's going to help if you're going to get more clients. You know, real estate, same sort of energy, having that energy of connection. And it's like, and looking at that. So it's like, you know far more than what you've been willing to acknowledge. So that's one thing I'd like to mention. And then one of my favorite tools with Joy Business is looking at the energy that the business requires. And every single business, no matter what business it is, requires the energy of creation, connection, and mover. Now, this doesn't have to be 3 different people. It could be one person, it could be 2, it could be 10, it could be 50, it could be 100. But if you look at the energy of creation, connection, and moving, Because I have seen some people that are wonderful creators, amazing creators, and they've created something so fabulous, but then they go, oh, it's not working. But nobody knows it exists. Oh, so what do you need? You need a connector. You need someone to get up there and connect with the world that your business, your service, your product, whatever it is, actually exists in the world. And it's not a wrongness if you are not one of these. I see so many people go to the wrongness because, you know, they might be a fabulous connector, and you'll know the connectors. They're the ones who, you know, are always talking to anyone, you know, standing in a movie line, standing in the shopping, you know, center, you know, waiting for your groceries sort of thing, or in the elevator, anywhere. They're the ones who will always smile, say hello, and have a chat. That's a connector. And if that's you, you usually aren't willing to receive money for it either, because you just think it's natural. You just think everyone can do that. Well, guess what? Not everyone can do that. And you've got the creative person who is sort of that sort of like, oh, this idea, you know, and has that creative capacity to bring things into fruition, to actualize it, to have that idea. And the mover is the person who has an ability and a capacity to perceive the future and what is required, and then be able to, you know, put things into place today to have that occur in the future. A mover is, you know, someone who has the ability basically to see the future. And then you've got the foundation person who is great at all three. So usually they make a great manager, they make a great, you know, CEO, coordinator, etc., because they have that more bird's eye view, you know, like the aerial view of what's going on, and they can do all of it, but they don't necessarily have to do it. It's more the energy of being aware of it. So ask with your business, okay, what energy does my business require? Creator, connector, or mover? And start asking for that energy to show up. So there's a few tools from the Business Done Different Masterclass. So, which I've actually got one in Paris happening soon, and it is live stream, but I just love saying it's in Paris. It's like, see you in Paris.
Right. Who wouldn't want to come to Paris for the wine and the cheese and the food and in summer? I think it's July 6th through 8th.
It is.
And yes, you can join online if you want to join from your own home. But I agree, who would not want to come to Paris? And there's no prerequisites for the class. So it really, truly is open to anybody can come. And you don't have to have a joy of business first to come. I know people ask you that sometimes.
Oh, I know. Actually, I'm quite amazed at how many people have said to me over the years, you know, I can't come to any of your classes. And I was like, why not? And they were like, because I don't have a joy of business. And isn't that a prerequisite? No, it's not a prerequisite. You know what? We will open up so many different things for you and get you to explore, you know, different things that are going on for you and what you would like to create. You don't need to own a business. You don't need to be in business. You can just have an idea, or like I say, it's your life. Like your business is your life and your life is your business. It's like, how do you want your life to be? You know, and it's not like any other class, any business class, I would say, that you would ever go to with anyone else. Some people who come along and have never been to an Access class and they sit there and, you know, with their, you know, their notepads and expect to sit up there and take notes, and we do a budget and we do all of that. We do talk about budgets. We can talk about anything. We can talk about tax. We can talk about creation. We can talk about, you know, hiring staff, firing staff. It's like all of it. We can talk about how you see your expanding your business, sales and marketing, anything. It's your class. All those classes, Business Done Different, are your classes. They change based on the questions that you ask. We do have a manual which has an amazing amount of information in it. And it is your class, and it's totally different to anything that you would ever come across. So I'm going to say, if you're out there and you're listening and everything that you've come across with business hasn't matched the energy of what you know is possible, then go to accessjoyofbusiness.com and find a JCF. A JCF is what we call a Joy of Business Facilitator, because, of course, we shorten everything. And find a JCF, and they've got one-day classes too called Access Business and Money. We have a whole series of these shorter evening classes, or sometimes people do them on Zooms or telecalls. And then you've got the 3-day masterclass of Business Done Different. So there's a lot available, and you don't need to have a degree. You don't need to have experience. You don't need to be a certain age. It's like you know, people, I see them go, oh, well, now I'm too old, or, you know, I've been married and had kids and now I've done this and I can't do that. No, wrong, wrong, wrong. It's like, no. And it's like, Colonel Sanders from Kentucky Fried Chicken, he came up with his award-winning recipe at like the age of 85 or something. So I'm not saying it was a good thing that he came up with that recipe, but he was still creating. So anyway that you've decided that you, like actually let's do this. All the reasons and justifications you have for not creating and not choosing the business and life you would truly like to live and have and be, where you destroy and uncreate it, right and wrong, good and bad, POC and POD, all names, shorts, boys and beyonds. This is your life. Are you actually choosing what you would like to choose, or would you like it to be different? So it's your choice. No one can make you do anything. As they say, you can, bring a horse to water, but you can't drink. So your life. If you want to keep whinging and bitching about what you're not creating, then keep doing that. But if you want a totally different reality, then I highly recommend. Get the book on Amazon, Joy of Business. Start with that, and then check out a JCF. Go find an Access Consciousness facilitator and get your bars run. There's thousands of them in 174 countries. So you have no excuse for not getting your bars run. And we've spoken about bars on this podcast. How would you explain?
How would I explain the bars?
Just a quick rundown. What does it do?
It gets you out of the way of you, and everywhere you'd like to, whatever you're asking for, create more. It kind of just creates this ease in your world, and it is different for everybody. But you lay down, you receive for an hour, and no matter what, like, things will change in your life. And what I see over and over is people access their creativity in different ways. And it's easy and it's fun. It can't hurt to try it.
Cool. I like that. So any other questions for me, or should we sign off?
Let's sign off. And I'm just so grateful for you and the tools of Joy Business, because they really do change so much. And the tools you gave, sometimes they're so simple and pragmatic and easy to use, and they truly create a change that I haven't seen anywhere else. So thank you.
Thank you, Emily. And I love that when we first hired you for Joy Business, you were like, I don't know anything. And you started freaking out. I was like, what do you know? What do you know? What are you aware of? And that totally changed.
Exactly. I mean, that's one of the tools you gave, and I was terrified to start working with Joy of Business, but yet I had read your book cover to cover, marked up every page, and that's on our very first meeting, I think. But you asked me, well, what do you know? And it seems like such a simple question, but it expanded my universe into really looking at what I did know in a completely different way about business and creation, and it's just continued to grow since then with that question and with you and Joy Business Tools. So thank you.
You're so welcome. And thank you for coming on and playing with me on this podcast, Emily. I'd love to have you on.
You're so welcome.
And everybody, if you like it, share it with your friends. If you want to get a summary of this, you can, click on the link and you'll get that. You can sign up for it. Don't forget to check out my good friend Megan Hill. She has What Else Is Possible show, another podcast, which is really brilliant. And check out accessjoybusiness.com. If you want to come do that business done different, we'd love to have you in Paris or on live stream. Your choice. So thanks, Emily, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Simone.